The desert wasn't sand. It was powdered glass, bright as frost in the morning light, razor-fine and always moving. The wind pushed it in slow, shimmering rivers across the flats, whispering against the metal skin of the cart as if it had something to say. Spat grit from his teeth and checked the pressure on the fuel pump again. The gauge didn't lie. 0. The little mag engine on the cart wasn't dead, it was worse. It was insulted. He could feel it, same way an old soldier feels a storm coming in his bones. The machine had personality, and right now it was telling him it had been fed garbage. He wiped his hands on his jacket and looked toward the horizon. 2 hours east, a spine of dark mesas clawed at the pale sky. Between here and there, glass flats, the old road, and the line of spindly cactus towers that locals called wishbones. Beyond the mesas lay settlement, 2,000 souls who were waiting on this cart. Food packs, water filters, a sealed crate labeled MEDICINES, cold chain. That part mattered most. Inside were ampules that could not get warm for long or they'd go dead. His clinic had sent a coded plea 3 days ago, fevers, lung strain, children collapsing in the night. Had loaded the cart himself and kicked the rear panels shut with his heel and said, "We'll make it." He hadn't planned on a dead engine. Watched him from the shade of the cart. Her ears were too large for her skull, alert triangles that turned with every sound, and her eyes were pale amber with a slit of darkness down the middle. Was a canine in some ways, not in others. Her muzzle was short, almost human. Her fur was silver along the cheeks and darker down her back, patchy in places where she wore a thin vest, patched and repatched. The collar at her throat was a dull ring of alloy with a single red light, long since burned out. "You smell it," she said in low, careful trade. She was 16 by human years, by clocks closer to adulthood. Wrong fuel like sweet rot. Unscrewed the filter housing. The solvent dripping out was tinted a light brown, too dark for clean ethanol. He lifted it to his nose and winced. Sweetness. He'd smelled that back on Earth a lifetime ago when bad people cut cheap liquor with syrup and sold it to soldiers who didn't know better. "Sabotage," he muttered. His ears folded back. "Again." "Not again because it never stops," he said, trying for a joke. His voice came out tired. He crouched on his heels and stared at the engine like it might apologize. "We filled at Ridgeway. Tank was clean when we left. Someone fed us false at the checkpoint." "The tax men said," she didn't say it like a guess. She said it like a law of nature. "They don't like you, they don't like me more." His jaw worked. The road bureau called it a compliance checkpoint. The locals called it the tally. Uniformed men with glass masks and barcode wands. Smile while they skim. Smile while they pour additives to protect the engine. Smile while they mark collars and papers and make sure everyone knew who owned what and who owned who. He put the filter down and cleaned the housing with slow, patient hands. "We'll not die out here because some clerk wants a bonus." Stepped out into the light. The heat grabbed her fur and made it shine. She moved with the steady, lean grace of an animal that spent her life walking. 2 sets of scars striped the tops of her forearms in pale lines, old harness marks. "We can pull," she said. Looked up, frowning. "I can pull, you steer. There is shade for one under the canopy. The rest we do with back and legs." Her eyes flicked to the crate marked MEDICINES. "They cannot get warm." He hated how she said his name, not the sound of it but the tone, firm, gentle, certain, like she'd already thought through the pain and found a way to live around it. He stood and scanned the sky. High far west, a faint smear of cloud, thin, no storm yet. The sun had teeth but not fangs. They had maybe 4 hours before the worst heat. "I'm not putting you in harness," he said. "You don't put me in anything," said, and the gray fur along her cheek bristled, not in anger, pride. "I put myself, my choice." "That's what the collars were made to erase," he said. "I am not a collar," she spat, then drew in a breath and swallowed. "Sorry, I know your heart, I know you don't look at me like a tool, but the cart must move. Your engine is dead." Stared at the red light on her collar. Long ago, the light had meant compliance and distance shock. It was dead now because he had deadened it. He cracked a smile that didn't feel like one. "You're right, the cart must move." He opened the storage bin and pulled out the emergency rig. Leather straps reinforced with woven polyfiber. Human-made, but adapted. He'd cut the old brass buckles off months ago and replaced them with quick-release clamps from a salvage yard. If the harness bound wrong or the load went sideways, a touch would spring it open. He'd done that for girls like her who still flinched at the sound of metal. He laid the harness out on the ground. The leather smelled warm and honest. Dropped to all fours, not as a surrender, but as a shift. Her spine lengthened. Her shoulders rolled. Her hands spread. Each finger had a thickened pad from walking. She lowered her head and pushed through the chest yoke with practiced ease. His fingers were careful on the buckles, and he spoke the adjustments aloud so she could correct him. Too high, okay, left strap pressure. Good, said. Her breath was steady. Right strap a little bite. He eased it, better. She pressed her weight into the collar, and the yoke's padding settled against muscle. Much. He locked the tow bar to the front axle. The cart weighed 600 kilos loaded. With the mag engine even slightly alive, the torque split made it feel like a third of that. Without it, even flat ground would fight them. On glass flats, the friction was sandpaper fine, but there was still drag. He calculated automatically, the way he used to in a different desert, on a different planet, with a different kind of cart that had a machine gun on top instead of medicine inside. Hydration protocol, he said like he was reciting a drill. He pressed a bite tube to lips. She sipped. The liquid was salty and tasted like copper and lemons. We pause every 20 minutes for 60 seconds. You don't push through, you call it. Understand. You're the boss, she said, which was also a kind lie. Didn't believe in bosses. She believed in promises made and kept. Climbed to the front panel and grabbed the steering grips. He powered the cabin fan off a spare cell and set the cold chain cooler to maximum draw. It would eat battery, but the meds mattered. He checked the time on his wrist. He checked the sky again. He checked the little tracker puck he'd bolted under the seat and made sure its light was off. He'd removed its radio weeks ago, but paranoia was a habit he wore like a second jacket. Ready, he said. Leaned forward and pulled. The cart jerked, resisted, then rolled. The front wheels carved faint grooves through glass dust. The sound was a low hiss, kept the handles light, correcting for drift as found rhythm. She didn't sprint, she didn't show off. She settled into a relentless, efficient pace like she had done it all her life because she had. Her breath timed with her steps. Her back muscles bunched and lengthened under fur like cables under a tarp. They moved. Felt a knot in his chest loosen. He matched her cadence with his hands, letting the cart follow her, not fight her. The sun climbed. Heat leaned on them, then leaned harder. The wishbone cacti creaked as the wind pushed their empty arms, and tiny glass lizards skittered from patch of shade to patch of shade. They hit a shallow grade and lowered her head and pulled harder. 20, she said between breaths. Clicked the brake and the cart slowed. He walked forward, unclipped the bite tube, and held it to her mouth. She drank. He poured water on the harness pads where they touched her shoulder and chest so the heat wouldn't burn her. The leather darkened, then steamed. You good? He asked. Good, she said. Your hands are shaking. Bad coffee, he lied. Liar. He grinned and recited. And I will buy you a bowl of bone broth and 2 honey cakes and the seat with the best view of the sunset. And you will not argue with the in-man about his spice tax, said. I make no such promise. She bared her teeth in a small smile and leaned into the yoke again. The cart moved. They were 3 kilometers into the flats when hackles lifted. No sound warned him. No shadow crossed. It was just the feeling, the one that kept him alive on a different war, the one that woke him before a mortar fell. He let his gaze go soft and wide, scanning without looking like he was scanning. The road behind them was empty, their tracks already smoothed by the wind. The road ahead glittered like water. The sky. There, a flicker, too low to be a hawk drone on official patrol. Too steady to be a wild kite. Squinted and the shape resolved into a tiny disc, gunmetal gray, the kind you could buy off a vendor in Ridgeway if you knew the words surveying could mean a lot of things. Private eyes, syndicate toys. Spoke without turning. I smell copper. Wind shift, asked. Metal ozone, old shock, not the sky, the collar remembers. He looked at the dead red light at her throat and felt a flash of white fury. It's dead. We killed it. I know, she said, but memory is not electric. It sits in the bones. Made a choice. We're cutting off the road. Nodded once. Tell me the angle. He pulled gently left and they left the old track for open flats. The glass was shallower off-road, softer. The cart fishtailed at first, then settled. The drone changed course by a degree hardly noticeable unless you were starring. Was starring. It has us, he said. Friends asked. She made the word dry. Not the sort who bring broth. They kept moving. The drone kept pace, always at the edge of sight, never drawing close enough to make a mistake. Patience meant professionals, or a machine running a program. Either way, not good. At the next hydration stop, kept his voice easy. We're going to try something. You do the clever thing, said. I will do the strong thing. He chuckled, deal. He stepped back to the engine case and opened the side panel. From his kit he pulled a small device he'd built from scrap and a stolen schema, a pulse pox shaped like a flattened spider, legs ending in magnetic pads. He pressed it against the metal and flicked the toggle. The pox hummed and sprayed the local air with random electromagnetic noise. To the cart's own circuits, it was a rude whisper. To a drone listening for signature, it was a prayer rug set on fire. If it's sniffing our engine profile, it'll get confused. Drank, her sides rose and fell. She didn't ask what if it wasn't sniffing their engine profile. She knew he didn't have another trick. They pushed on. The drone drifted wider like a gull forced off balance by a gust, then slid back into place. Not confused then, watching something else. Glanced down its collar, then at the cooler with its quiet blink. There were chips in both. He'd gutted the collar's transmitter long ago. He'd replaced the cooler's standard radio with but the crate, he hadn't touched the crate. He hadn't wanted to crack the medic's seal. Cursed softly, they tagged the crate. His ears flattened, so they don't stop the medicine, they stop us. Or they let the medicine roll while they collect the stolen asset pulling it, said, bitterness leaking through. Neat paperwork, big bonus. She said, warning and gentle in one breath. He heard the edges of her strength. They were not close to breaking, but they were there. I'm thinking, he said. They angled toward the wishbone cacti. Closer up, the plants were stranger. Each limb was a hollow tube lined with tiny barbs that sang when wind blew through them. Low music, almost a chord. He guided the cart between two clusters and they moved into a band of shade and sound. The hum rattled his teeth. Stop, he said softly. Braked with her body. He flicked the main brake and they settled. He ran a quick loop of line under the axle and around a rock spike, a safety check that said, "Don't you dare roll." He climbed off the front and went to the crate. It was white polymer with a blue stripe and the seal of health, a cross that looked like a star. He stared at the molded handles, the hinges, the seam. Don't open it, said, not a command, a plea. If you break the chain, they die. I know, he said. His fingers moved anyway, not to pry, but to feel. He felt a bump under the right side handle, no larger than a thumbnail. It could have been a molding error. It could have been a tracker. Worked a pry tool into the handle seam and popped the handle's cover. There, glued inside out of sight, sat a flat chip with 9 gold dots. Damn, he whispered. His eyes closed for a second, as if in relief that his paranoia had a home now and could stop packing. Can you kill it? I can blind it, he said. He pulled a foil bag from his kit, the kind used to store spare boards, and slid it over the chip. He wrapped it tight and taped it with cloth tape. He didn't remove the chip. He didn't break the seal. He just suffocated the signal. There, if they're good, they'll notice it went quiet. If they're lazy, they'll think the chip died in the heat. We still move, said. He nodded, we still move. They did. The shade fell away. Time thickened. Heat like a hand on the back of the neck. Step, breathe, pull, kept his voice low and easy, a stream of talk with small stories in it, a habit from his old life when you walked wounded men through pain with your mouth because your hands were busy. He told about the ocean on Earth. He told her about a market in Karachi where the fish sang when the ice cracked. He lied about the singing, but it painted a picture that made her ears lift. She told him about her mother's garden in a valley far south, root fruit that tasted like salt and little white blossoms that opened at night. She said the garden was gone now. She said it without weeping. They did not weep in front of those they called pack unless weeping was required by story or ritual. This was neither. This was work. 20, said again, and they paused, drank, breathed, pushed on. They were a kilometer from the first mesa when the drone finally made its move. It dropped lower, quick and precise, and a green dot scribbled across his chest. Down, he snapped. He threw his weight sideways and dragged the cart's nose toward a cluster of wishbones. Didn't hesitate. She threw herself with him, harness lines humming, legs churning. A bolt of bright blue iron fire lanced the road where they had been. The glass dust there leapt, melted, froze. Said, rolling to his knees, they want us stunned and tagged. His tongue lolled a hot breath laugh. Then they misjudge my bite. The drone circled, looking for a clean shot that wouldn't risk the crate. Eyes drew narrow. He had a pulse pox, a handful of tools, a dead engine, a girl in harness, and a cart full of hope. He also had a temper, but that never saved anyone. Plan, said. We get under the mesa lip, he said. Too much overhang for a clean firing solution. We use rock as shield, then we climb the goat path up and over before they can bring ground. He said it fast, like speed could turn it from wish to fact. Nodded, then we go. They cut toward the mesa. The ground here was less glass, more grit. The cart's wheels bumped over stone, leaned into the grips and used his weight to help crest two low shelves. The drone buzzed and fired again, the bolt struck a wishbone, and the plant sang high and then went silent, blackened. Left seam called. He scouted this route last year in a different season. There was a cut in the stone, narrow, running toward a shadow pocket where you could catch your breath and not die. He found it again by memory and luck, threw herself into the gap and the cart nose scraped and then slid through, and for a heartbeat they were in cool shade. The drone hesitated. The overhang protected them like a stone roof. Good, said between pants. Very good. Flatter me later, he smiled to soften the order. Goat path is ahead. It was a path only in the sense that something with hooves had once decided it was possible and then repeated itself until the rock remembered. It tilted over a slope that fell away into white glare. The cart would hate it. The cart did, in fact, hate it. When turned onto the path, the wheels screamed and the load shifted. Line, gasped. He had already unclipped the auxiliary line from the rack. He ran it around a big rock spur and back to the cart frame and made a belay. The load's weight pulled into the line. He cinched it, braced, and felt the bite in his shoulders. Leaned, her muscles bunched into ropes under her fur. Her claws scrabbled for purchase on stone. The cart moved inches, then stopped, then moved again. The drone circled outside the overhang, waiting. Halfway, lied. They were not halfway. He felt the line tremble. He heard a sound like a coin dropped in water. Froze. What was that? Knew before he looked. The line around the rock had slid into a groove of glass smooth where, ground down by years of wind-borne dust, it had heated under strain. The cord's fibers had softened then. The line snapped. The cart lunged backward. Threw himself forward, grabbing the front rail. Snarled, a raw, shocked sound, and dug all four limbs into the rock. He felt the jerk in his arms and thought, we will go together, we will go down, and the meds will scatter like stars on the slope. Then the cart stopped with a savage jolt that tore skin from his palms. Hadn't moved. She had impossibly caught the cart with her body alone, harness straps screaming and smoking where they rubbed. Her eyes were wide and wild, not with fear but with a feral joy that said, I am alive and strong, and you are mine, and I will not let you fall. She said through teeth, tie us again. He did, hands fast and clumsy with adrenaline. He looped the line twice this time, then a third, then anchored it to a secondary spur, then he got behind the cart and pushed. Inch by inch, they clawed up the goat path. The drone, furious now or bored, zipped closer, saw a second green dot appear on the crate. No, he snarled and reached for the pulse pox. He ripped it from the engine panel and hurled it like a flat stone toward the drone. It pinwheeled, stuck to a bit of ledge, and chirped. The signal noise spiked. The drone wobbled, spun like a frisbee, and smacked hard into the overhang. It didn't explode. It just fell, a stupid, heavy piece of someone else's money, and vanished into the glare below. Didn't get to cheer. The line slipped again. He leaned, hauled. The cart crested the lip of the shelf with a sound like a groan and rolled into the safety of a flat bench of stone, collapsed beside it. Folded, chest heaving, tongue out, eyes closed. The harness straps smoked and hissed where water hit them. Silence settled. The wishbones sang low behind them. The flats glittered. For a moment it was only breathing, safe. Then from above a thud, boot on rock. His head snapped up. A shadow cut the light at the top of the bench. Three figures stepped into view, backlit by the sun. Long coats, masks of dark glass. Their shoulder patches showed the Rodan scale emblem of the Bureau. One held a compact rifle, relaxed but ready. Another held a handheld with a tracker screen that pinged cheerfully. The man in the middle tilted his head, voice echoing inside the mask. "Mister," he said, pleasant as a host, "you've given us a lively chase." His ears flattened, stood, palms raw, and put himself between her and the men. The masked man continued, tone light. "You are in unlawful possession of Bureau property. Hand over the asset and the cart. You may keep your life." His blood went cold. "You're not taking her." The man chuckled softly. "We're not negotiating about the animal, mister. We're negotiating about whether you walk or we drag you." He held up the handheld and tapped the screen. The dead red light on his collar flickered once, then twice, then horribly glowed steady. The collar had just come back to life. For half a heartbeat, couldn't breathe. That red glow on his collar was more than a light. It was a shackle that reached into her bones. He had smashed the transmitter months ago, stripped the power cell, gutted the control chip. The only way it could be lit now was if someone had replaced those parts or had a second power circuit buried in there, one he had never found. Froze, not because she wanted to, because she had to. Her muscles locked in a way had never seen from her before. The fur along her shoulders trembled. Her eyes were wide but glassy, not tracking the bureau men anymore. The leader's voice was smooth, almost bored. Mark VII collars have redundancies. Always amusing to watch you tinkerers think you've beaten them. All we have to do is pulse the buried cell and he tapped the screen again, twitched hard, a full-body flinch. We have compliance. Stepped forward, planting himself between and the men. Turn it off. The man tilted his head, almost curious. You really don't understand, do you? She's not a person, mister. She's an asset. This model costs more than your entire cart. Her training, her conditioning. He gestured lazily toward. You think she pulls because she's loyal? She pulls because she was built to. That's not why she pulls, said. His voice was low now, dangerous. The second bureau man shifted his rifle slightly. Enough chatter. Asset control first. The leader ignored him, still studying. You've been interfering with bureau property for months, harboring stolen labor, diverting regulated medical shipments. You could kept your head down, kept your little smuggling gig, but you had to play hero. He tapped the screen again, gasped. His hands curled into fists. He wanted to lunge, break the man's mask, tear the handheld away. But the rifle was still there, aimed low but ready. And if they stunned him first, would be alone, collared, compliant, dragged back into the system. He forced his voice calm. You're not taking her. The man chuckled. We already have her, you just haven't let go yet. Glanced at, her breath was ragged, not from exhaustion now, but from fighting whatever signal was pouring through that collar. Her claws dug into the stone. She met his gaze, and in her eyes, beneath the pain, he saw it. She was still there. Not broken, not yet. Shifted his stance just enough that his right hand brushed the side of the cart. The emergency pouch was strapped there. Inside, a flare knife and a smoke, if he could blind them for even a few seconds. The leader saw the movement. Don't, he warned, voice sharp now. Your only way out of this alive is compliance. Hand over the cart, hand over the... Smiled faintly. You boys always talk too much. He moved fast. His hand yanked the pouch open, pulled the smoke, and slammed it down on the stone. It burst in a roar of red-black smoke, thick and choking. The bureau men cursed inside their masks, their visors struggling to compensate. Spun toward, grabbed the quick-release buckles on her harness, and popped them one by one. Move. The collar light flared, hissed in pain but lunged with him into the smoke. A blue iron bolt cracked past his ear, close enough to raise heat on his skin. They ducked low, skirting the cart's side, and sprinted toward the narrow seam that led deeper into the mesa's shadow. Behind them, boots clanged on stone. A voice shouted, stun setting now. Stumbled once, her legs fighting the collar's signal, but hooked his arm under her and dragged until she caught herself again. Her breath was hot and ragged against his shoulder. The seam narrowed, forcing them sideways. Smoke drifted after them, but the wind was against them now. It would clear fast. His mind raced. He couldn't rip the collar off without tools, and he didn't have the luxury of stopping. He needed distance. He needed terrain the Bureau's rifles hated. The path bent sharply, and they found themselves on a ledge no wider than a man's shoulders, the drop sheer and glittering with glass dust. The only way forward was a crawl. Pressed close, her claws finding holds in the rock, she rasped. I know, he kept moving, scanning the ledge ahead. The shouts behind them grew louder. They were being followed. Then from somewhere far below, a sound rolled up the rock like thunder, but it wasn't thunder. It was heavier, slower, something alive. His ears twitched, she whispered, hunter beasts. Had never seen one, only heard stories. Scaled quadrupeds the size of cargo trucks, bred by the old warlords to patrol the desert canyons. Semi-domesticated, half-wild now. He looked at the narrow ledge, the drop, the sound growing closer from below. Ahead of him, the ledge ended in black shadow, a cave mouth. Too perfect, too inviting. From behind, boots scraped. From below, the growl rose. Had seconds to choose. Keep climbing exposed on the ledge or take their chances in the dark. He looked at, she bared her teeth, not in fear but in readiness. Dark it is, he said. They slipped into the cave, just as the first bureau man rounded the bend. The darkness swallowed them whole. The cave air was cold, shockingly cold after the furnace of the flats. It smelled of wet stone, old earth, and meat. Not fresh meat, meat that had been stored in a stomach too long. Slowed, one hand out in front, the other gripping his arm. The dark was complete. No stars, no glow from the flats, nothing. He could hear the faint drip of water somewhere deeper in, and behind that, the low rumble of breath. His voice was a whisper against his ear. Her tone was different now, no longer warning but stating a fact. His fingers itched for a flashlight, but light could mean death. We're ambush hunters. Their eyes caught light and tracked it like prey. He remembered what an old caravan driver had told him in a bar. If you can see their eyes, it's already too late. A stone clinked behind them, boot on rock. The bureau men had followed into the cave. The sound was closer than liked. The smoke hadn't bought much time. He crouched, pulled close. We move quiet, hug the wall, feel for drafts. His claws tapped gently against the stone as she shifted to all fours again, body low, ears swiveling. She could see better than him in near dark, but not much better. 3 heartbeats, she murmured. He understood, 3 heartbeats until the breath sound shifted. And it did. The rumble grew deeper, turning into a wet, grinding noise like rocks being chewed. The air moved over skin, warmer now, and it carried a smell that made his stomach clench. There was a wake. From behind, a bureau voice echoed in the dark. "Mister, stop, you're walking into—" The voice cut off in a sharp gasp, then a wet, muffled scream. Something heavy moved. Stones scraped. The cave filled with the sound of tearing. "Didn't look back, now," she hissed. They slipped along the wall, the sounds of the kill behind them masking the small noises they made. His heart hammered, but he kept his breathing even. Any sudden sound could draw the predator's attention away from its meal. The cave widened just enough that a thin seam of light appeared ahead. Not daylight, more like the dull glow of phosphorescent moss clinging to damp rock. Reached out and brushed it with his fingers. The moss pulsed faintly under his touch, lighting the wall in a green haze. That was when he saw it. Of the size of his chest, pressed deep into the damp earth. 3 forward claws, each curved like a sickle. The print was fresh. His nostrils flared, not alone. More than one. From deeper inside came another rumble, this one higher, impatient. Imagined it, the second beast lifting its head, scenting the air, catching their trail. He spotted a narrow split in the wall to the right, barely wide enough for them, too tight for something the size of a. He pointed. There. They slipped inside, twisting sideways. The stone scraped a jacket, caught fur. The space stank of mineral water and old dust, but it was safe for now. A massive shadow passed the split's opening. The moss light caught it just enough for to see the curve of muscle under scaled hide. The head was low, eyes black and lidless, mouth opening to taste the air with a forked, pale tongue. The beast paused, sniffed. Its breathing slowed to nothing, could feel the tension in her muscles like coiled steel. Then from the direction of the bureau men, another scream, short, cut off. The beast's head snapped toward the sound, and it moved away in a rolling, predatory gait. Exhaled silently. We move when they feed again. But wasn't looking at the beasts anymore. She was looking deeper into the crack they had squeezed into. Her ears were forward, alert. There is air moving, cold air. A second way out. They followed the draft, inching through the stone until it opened into a vertical shaft. Above, the faintest hint of daylight. Not much, just enough to turn the darkness to a deep gray. It was climbable, barely. Tested the wall, the stone was wet, slick, but pocked with enough holds. You go first, I'll boost you. Hesitated, eyes flicking to his raw hands. You first, you are slower. He almost argued, but the collar's red light still glowed faintly against her throat. If the bureau regained signal control outside, they could freeze her in place. She needed to be out of range first. Fine, he said, planting his boot and hands. He climbed, slow and steady, ignoring the way the wet stone bit at his skin. Halfway up, he heard movement below, too heavy for, too steady for panic. The had finished eating, and it had found their scent again. Climb, hissed, urgency in every syllable. Scrambled up behind him, her claws finding holds his hands couldn't. The sound of claws, bigger, heavier, scraped against stone below. The beast's head was pushing into the crack, its shoulders grinding at the stone, widening it grain by grain. They climbed faster, the daylight above grew brighter. Then's boot slipped, his knee slammed the wall. Pain shot up his leg. He hung for a moment, one hand losing grip. His arm hooked under his, claws digging into the stone to hold them both. She growled through clenched teeth, "Move, human." He did. They burst out of the shaft onto a ledge high on the mesa's outer face. The wind hit them like a blessing. Below stretched the glass flats, shimmering in the sun. No bureau men, no drone. But in the distance, beyond the horizon shimmer, 3 more gray dots hovered in the sky. More drones, and they were coming fast. The wind on the mesa top was sharp, carrying the dry tang of ozone, crouched low, scanning the flats below. The 3 drones were growing larger, moving in a loose arc. They weren't just following, they were herding. Dropped beside him, chest heaving. The red light on her collar still burned faintly, an ember of control that could flare again any second. Her ears flicked toward the drones, then toward the mesa edge opposite the shaft they'd climbed from. "They want us to move that way," she said. Followed her gaze. Beyond the far edge, the land dropped into a shallow basin, a natural amphitheater of bare stone and shimmering heat. Too open, no cover, perfect for a capture. "Yeah," he said grimly, "that's their net." The nearest drone let out a low hum, and a thin beam of green light painted the rock just in front of them. A warning shot, precise and patient. His jaw tightened. "We're not going where they want us." His tail twitched. Then where? He looked north. The mesa narrowed into a jagged ridge that led to a cluster of dark shapes, weather-worn stone towers, like the ruins of some ancient city. He didn't know if there was shelter there, but at least the terrain would be a nightmare for drones. "That way," he said, pointing. "Stay low, move fast." They broke into a run, feet pounding the sun-hot stone. The wind tugged its jacket, whipping dust from the mesa's surface. The drones shifted, 2 breaking off to angle toward them while the third hung back, probably keeping them in sight for the Bureau's ground team. A high-pitched whine cut the air, Swore and dove sideways, pulling down with him. An iron bolt sizzled past, striking the rock where they'd been a heartbeat before. The stone hissed and spat molten flecks. "They're escalating," muttered. "Then we run faster," growled, hauling him to his feet. They sprinted for the ridge. The drones adjusted, swooping lower now, their rotors kicking up spirals of dust. His mind raced. They couldn't outrun flying machines forever, but they could break line of sight. Up ahead, a jagged crack split the ridge like a scar, angled toward it. In there. The crack narrowed quickly, forcing them single file. The walls rose steep on either side, blocking the drones' approach. The air inside was cooler, but the space was tight enough that the stones scraped their shoulders. "Better," said, glancing up. "No sky here." "Yeah," said, but his relief was short-lived. The crack twisted and rose in a sharp incline. Loose gravel shifted under their feet, threatening to send them sliding back. Above them, the passage widened into a sheer wall of rock. A dead end. Stopped breathing hard. Damn it. Tilted her head, listening. "Not dead," she said. She pointed to a shadow high on the wall, a narrow ledge barely visible. Above it, another split in the rock angled upward. Followed her gaze. "You think you can climb that?" Her grin was sharp. "I know I can. Question is, can you?" He almost laughed. "We'll find out." They scrambled upward, using every foothold he could find, moving with the easy grace of someone born for this. Twice he nearly lost his grip, and twice her claws hooked into his jacket, steadying him. The drone's hum had faded behind the stone, but he knew they were waiting. When they reached the ledge, peered into the split. It sloped upward into darkness, but the air moving through it was dry and hot, not stale. A way out. "Go," he said. They moved quickly, the narrow passage echoing with their steps. The heat grew stronger, and with it came a faint metallic scent. His ears twitched. "Smell that?" "Yeah," said. "Smells like." They emerged into blinding sunlight on the other side of the ridge, and froze. The ground ahead was a field of jagged, twisted metal. Rusted frames, broken wheels, shattered hulls of old vehicles half buried in the dust. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, scattered across the basin. And moving among them were machines. Tall, spindly insect-like things with long sensor stalks and grasping claws. They moved in slow, deliberate arcs, scanning each wreck. "Scrap harvesters," whispered. Stomach sank. "Yeah, automated, old war leftovers." The nearest harvester paused, its sensor stalk turning toward them. A soft, clicking hum rose in the air. His voice was low. "It sees us." The harvester's claws unfolded, its head lowered. The hum deepened into something that felt almost like a growl. And somewhere behind them, over the ridge, the whine of drone rotors returned. They were trapped, drones behind, harvesters ahead. Glanced at saw the set of her jaw, the defiance in her eyes. "We're not dying here," he said. She bared her teeth, "Then make a plan." The first harvester broke from its slow arc, moving toward them in a smooth, insectal glide. The long, jointed legs barely touched the ground, claws flexing like it was deciding how best to peel them apart. His mind raced. He knew the type, Model 9 scavenger, automated war salvage units programmed to strip anything that wasn't broadcasting the right friend or foe codes. They didn't care if you were alive. If you were unregistered material, you were scrap. And right now, he and were scrap. Behind them, the drone whine grew sharper, closer. The Bureau was sweeping the ridge, and it wouldn't take long for them to drop in. His voice was low, almost steady. Two behind, one ahead, no good place. His eyes tracked the field. The wrecks were old, busted war carts, twisted rover frames, shattered turret bases. Some lay flat, but others were piled, forming jagged islands of metal and shadow. In between, half-buried cables looped like dead snakes. An idea hit him hard enough to make him grin despite the danger. Actually, might be the perfect place. He grabbed his arm. "Stay close, and when I say run, you run." They moved fast, weaving into the wreck field. The harvester followed, legs clattering softly over the metal, claws clicking in anticipation. Ducked behind the rusted shell of a cargo hauler and yanked open a panel. Inside, tangled wiring, half of it brittle, the other half still faintly humming. He tore out a thick coil and stripped the ends with his knife. The metallic scent in the air wasn't just rust, it was charge. Some of these wrecks still had power in their deep cells, slowly bleeding out over decades. "Hold this," he said, shoving one stripped end into his hand. She looked at him like he was mad, but obeyed. He jammed the other end into a protruding circuit panel on the hauler's frame. The metal hummed, faint but rising. The harvester rounded the corner. Its sensor stalk dipped low, locking onto them. "Now," barked. Flung the cable end toward the harvester's leg. It didn't have to touch, just arc. A blue-white snap of electricity leapt between them with a sound like tearing cloth. The harvester convulsed, legs jerking wildly. Sparks spat from its joints. It didn't fall, but it staggered. Didn't wait to admire the damage. Move. They bolted deeper into the field. The harvester recovered with a shuddering whine and followed, now joined by a second one that emerged from behind a mound of crushed rover parts. And then the Bureau drones cleared the ridge. They came in low, scanning. One of them locked a beam on the nearest harvester, and the machine, following its simple code, registered the drone as an unrecognized active unit. The harvester's claws snapped upward, faster than its size should allow, and caught the drone mid-hover. Metal shrieked as it crushed the rotor assembly, dropping the drone like a stone. His ears twitched. "They fight each other." "Yeah," said, already adjusting the plan. "Let's make them fight more." They sprinted toward a cluster of wrecked turrets, each one half sunk into the dust. Remembered these, auto-defense rigs from the old border wars. Most would be dead, but even one half alive could be trouble for anything moving in its range. He clambered up the nearest, opened the service hatch, and found a cracked but intact targeting relay. With a few quick rewires, he fed the relay a looped signal. Anything moving in the wreck field was now enemy. The turret groaned like a waking animal. Its barrel twitched. A Bureau drone zipped past, scanning for him. The turret locked on instantly and spat a bolt of ion fire that sheared its left rotor off. The drone spun out, crashing into a heap of metal. The second harvester caught the movement and lurched toward the downed drone, its programming prioritizing salvage of active tech. The first harvester joined it, claws clanging as they fought over the wreck like vultures. The third drone tried to rise above the chaos for a better angle, but the turret tracked it too, firing again. Grinned, breathless, "Your chaos is good chaos." "Let's hope it's enough," said. "Come on through there." They threaded between the wreck piles, using the noise of machine-on-machine violence to mask their movement. The basin's far side was a steep slope of broken stone, leading up toward another ridge. If they could get over that, they'd have line of sight to the open flats again, and maybe a clear run too. Halfway to the slope, the collar on his neck pulsed. She stumbled, claws scraping at the metal. Caught her before she fell. Talk to me. Her teeth were clenched, breath short. Signal stronger, someone's close. Stomach dropped. The Bureau's ground team had to be moving in from another direction, closing the net while the drones kept them busy. The noise behind them intensified, a turret shot hitting something volatile. The ground shook with the boom. Shards of metal whined through the air. Go, urged. They climbed the slope, the heat baking through their boots. At the top, he risked a glance back. The wreck field was chaos, drones sparking, harvesters locked in mechanical brawls, the turret spitting random fire into the fray. But between the wrecks, weaving with steady purpose, came figures in bureau coats and glass masks. They were ignoring the chaos, ignoring the machines, all focus on the ridge where he stood. And leading them was the same masked man from the Mesa bench, tracker in one hand, the other holding a small black device. The collar light on his throat flared brighter. She gasped, dropping to her knees. The masked man's voice carried easily across the gap, smooth and cold. End of the run, mister. The asset comes home now. His hands clenched. He could run and maybe live, or he could turn back into the chaos of the wreck field and gamble everything. His eyes met his. Even through the pain, they said the same thing, don't let them take me. Didn't think, he decided. On your feet, he told, his tone left no room for the collar's pain. We're not running away, we're ending this. Her claws dug into the dirt as she forced herself up. The red light on her collar still blazed, the signal from the masked man's device pushing at her nerves like hot wires under the skin. But she bared her teeth. Tell me what to do. His eyes flicked over the wreck field below. The harvesters were still tangled in brutal, jerking fights. The damaged turret was locked in a slow spin, firing wild bursts whenever its targeting sweep found something that moved. Sparks and smoke drifted into the heat-shimmer air. The Bureau team was threading through it all, unnervingly precise, like they'd rehearsed this pattern before. They'll keep walking right through the chaos, thought, unless the chaos gets big enough to swallow them. He grabbed shoulder. We're going to light this place up, big enough that even the Bureau won't step in. We start with that. He pointed at a half-buried wreck shaped like a wide, shallow dome, a war-cart generator hub. His ears flicked. Old power cell. Exactly, said. If it's still holding charge, we can make it go critical. Harvesters won't know what hit them. They slid down the slope, keeping low. Shouts from the Bureau men followed them, the leader's voice cutting sharp. Hold them, don't damage the asset. The first harvester spotted them and broke off from its fight, moving with an awful insect grace. Its claws scraped against a rusted frame, throwing sparks. Yanked his knife free. I'll distract it. No, cut in. She dropped to all fours, charging low and fast, drawing the harvester's sensors toward her movement. The claws swung wide, but she was already past, weaving between two wrecks. The harvester turned to follow her, just in time for to slam his stripped cable into a dangling power conduit overhead. The arc cracked like lightning. The harvester seized up, legs locking. It twitched, sensors blinking erratic patterns, darted back to him, grinning despite the red glow burning at her throat. Generator, said, pointing. They reached the dome-shaped wreck. Up close, the old armor plating was blackened and pitted, but the access panel was still visible. Worked the pry bar under it, metal screeching until the cover came free. Inside, the dull silver curve of a war cell, still humming faintly with trapped energy. Back warned. Stepped away, covering him with her body angled toward the Bureau's approach. Jammed his cable into the cell's outer circuit and twisted the knife into the connection port, shorting it. The hum spiked into a rising, angry whine. It said, voice tight, they're close. The masked leader was less than 20 meters away now, holding the black control device up like a leash. The light on his collar flared even brighter. She staggered but didn't fall. Yanked the cable free and backed up fast. Time to go. The whine of the war cell had become a scream. The harvesters nearby stopped fighting and turned toward it, drawn by the sudden surge of power. The Bureau men hesitated, weapons shifting uncertainly. Then the generator blew. It wasn't a single boom. It was a series of violent, cracking pulses that ripped through the wreck field. Fire belched from the dome's seams, hurling shrapnel into the air. The blast wave knocked the nearest harvester clean off its legs, its limbs thrashing as it fell. Smoke and flame rolled outward. Wrecks collapsed into each other, dominoing piles of rust and debris. The damaged turret spun wildly, firing in all directions before its barrel melted in the heat. The Bureau team scattered, breaking formation. Even the masked leader ducked low, shielding his device. The moment his focus broke, his collar light dimmed, and she inhaled sharply like someone surfacing from deep water. "Run!" shouted. They wove through the burning wrecks, the heat slamming into them like an open furnace door. His boots slid on twisted metal, hauled him up by his jacket twice. Behind them, another war cart's ammo stores ignited, sending a plume of fire into the sky. The harvesters went mad. Their programming read the destruction as hostile action from everything in range. They attacked indiscriminately, Bureau men, drones, even each other. The wreck field became a killing ground. And reached the far edge, scrambling up a slope of loose rock and melted metal. The Bureau leader's voice echoed faintly through the chaos. "Don't let them!" It was cut off by the shriek of a harvester's claws meeting armor. They crested the ridge, leaving the wreck field behind. The air ahead shimmered with heat, but beyond it stretched the open flats, the last stretch too. Glanced back once. Smoke boiled from the basin, blotting out the sun. Figures moved in the haze, but he couldn't tell if any of them would make it out alive. Stumbled beside him, and he caught her before she fell. The collar's light was down to a faint pulse now, but it still glowed. "They'll come again," she said, voice hoarse. "Yeah," said, looking at the flats, "but not before we get those meds too." And then from the smoke behind them, a single Bureau drone rose, battered, smoking, but still in the air. It turned toward them, rotors whining. His ears flattened. "We're not done." His eyes narrowed. "Then let's finish it." The drone's shadow skimmed the rock before them, then swept ahead onto the flats. Its rotors howled, dipping low enough that could see the heat distortion from its ion cannon. It wasn't scouting now, it was hunting. Pulled into the meager shade of a jagged boulder. "We've got one cell left in the cooler's reserve," he said quickly. "Enough to give the mag engine a kick, maybe 3 minutes of assist." His chest still heaved from the climb, the red light on her collar pulsing faintly like a heartbeat she didn't want. 3 minutes won't get us to." "No," said, "but it might get us far enough for you to run the rest without the drone on us." Her ears flattened. "You're not staying behind." "Not the plan," said. He glanced at the flats, judging distance and angles. "The plan is we make that drone choose, chase the cart or chase me." The wind gusted, carrying the faint scent of rain far to the west. A storm maybe half a day away. It wouldn't help them now. Met her eyes. "You've got more in you, enough to pull the cart to. You do that, those kids get their medicine. I'll deal with the tin buzzard." His tail twitched once. "We both get to." He didn't argue, there wasn't time. "On my mark." They burst from cover, hit the ignition, and the mag engine shuddered to life with a high, strained whine. The cart leapt forward, dropping into harness with a grunt, her stride smoothing instantly into the relentless rhythm that had carried them this far. The drone swung toward them, the green dot painting the flats just ahead of the cart. Yanked the steering grips hard left, the wheels skidding in a spray of glass dust. The dot followed the motion, tracking him not. "Good," he muttered. The engine whined higher, heat bleeding from the vents. The drone dropped lower, now barely 10 meters above the flats. Could hear the ion capacitors cycling. "Mark," he shouted. Veered right without slowing, hauling the cart into a shallow trough between two low rises. Kicked free the safety latch on the front harness clip, rolled off the cart, and hit the flats running in the opposite direction. The drone hesitated, then locked onto him. The green dot tracked his back. "Come on," panted. "You want me, come get me." He zigzagged, forcing the drone to adjust. A bolt of ion fire sizzled past, close enough that the hair on his arm stood on end. Another struck the flats ahead of him, fusing a patch of glass to black slag. Behind didn't look back. Her stride stayed steady, the cart rolling smooth behind her. She was gaining distance, every meter taking her closer to. Saw a dark patch ahead, a shallow depression where the wind had piled the glass dust thick. He sprinted for it, lungs burning. The drone followed, rotor wash whipping the dust into streamers. At the last second, dropped flat into the depression, yanking a small cylinder from his belt, the last smoke. He smashed it into the dust. The wind caught the black-red smoke instantly, swirling it upward into the drone's intake. The rotors coughed, then shrieked as the particulate clogged their precision fans. The drone tilted, tried to climb, failed. It spun sideways, clipping the depression's edge before slamming into the flats in a shower of sparks. Stayed down until the whine of its rotors faded to nothing. When he stood, the only sound was the wind. He turned. Far ahead, almost at the horizon shimmer, the cart rolled on, still in harness, still pulling. Rand. Every step hurt, but the distance closed. The red light on her collar was barely visible now, a dying ember in the sun. When he finally caught up, she slowed just enough for him to grab the side rail and swing onto the cart. "Drone done," he said, chest heaving. Her mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close. "So is the collar." He looked. The red light had gone dark. Whether the Bureau's control unit had been lost in the wreck field or the drone had been the last relay, it didn't matter. It was dead. They didn't speak again until slow, domed buildings rose from the flats. People were already running to meet them. Medics with cold packs for the crate, children clinging to their mothers' legs, the settlement elder leaning on his cane but moving faster than had ever seen. They lifted the crate down together, stepping clear of the harness for the first time since morning. Her fur was soaked dark along her shoulders, dust and sweat matting it, but her back was straight. The elder took hands, voice rough. "You made it." Glanced at, "We made it." That night, after the medicine was secured and the settlement was quiet, they sat on the low wall by the east gate. The wind was cooler now, carrying the scent of the distant storm. Leaned back, eyes half closed. "Where do we go next?" Smiled faintly. "Wherever the Bureau doesn't want us." She opened one eye. "That's everywhere." "Yeah," he said. "Good thing we like a challenge." Above them, the stars burned sharp and cold. Somewhere out there, the Bureau was already planning their next move. And somewhere closer, the two of them were already planning how to break it.